Thank you. Is my screen shared? Do you see this?
Yep, there we go.
There it is.
Yep, you're all set.
Hello, everyone. Let me tell you a story. It's the story about this guy, a sad man lost in the desert. No education, no stable job, 700,000 euros in personal debt, living in a rented home, and divorced. All of this is true. Now, what if I told you a different story about the director of the College of Extraordinary Experiences, a coach at McKinsey, one of the founding partners at the Global Institute for Thought Leadership, just came out, was his book number 30, and even has a stake in a professional ruby hunting operation in Greenland. Now, even though I'm divorced, actually happily divorced, if that's possible, I have a small and loving family, lying down as Sue and sitting with the iPad as Saga. And when it comes to using pictures of my daughter in presentations, I have zero shame. All of this is true as well, especially the last part. But here's a third version.
Working with Klaus is unlike anything that I have ever experienced or that anyone will ever experience.
Working with Klaus is like opening doors up to a new dimension.
What Klaus does is expand people's minds to be more adaptable and elastic. And the outcomes you get from that are really spectacular.
You can take something that can be really boring and corporate and honestly just stale, and Klaus has an ability to breathe life into a project and to help you see things from a different perspective where otherwise you would never get there.
Everything is fast, everything is connected, everything is possible. Things you couldn't dream of before is suddenly doable.
He has this remarkable capacity to both completely command the attention of the room when needed, while simultaneously giving space for others to collaborate and contribute.
His energy is contagious. He has a way with people and being able to bring an energy into a room unlike anyone that I have ever encountered. And I've encountered a lot of people professionally throughout the world.
Working with Klaus, you have to handle with care and brace for impact.
And you're at a rock concert, and you're going to go absolutely fucking crazy when we get on stage. Can you do that?
Stories can be told in many ways. Personally, though the first one is true, it's not the one I tell at the beginning, but it's part of me as well. Because the underlying reality is the same. Why do stories matter? Well, they matter because our brains are wired for story. In fact, we're really not that good as humans at things like facts and numbers and that sort of thing. We pride ourselves on our intellectual capacity, but in the words of Daniel Kahneman, the mind, or kind of the brain, thinks it's the West Wing of the White House making all the decisions. But in reality, it's more like the press office. We have all these hardwired impulses that control what we do, and then we spend most of our time justifying it. However, stories connect with us. If we connect with a story, if we feel engaged by a story, not only do we remember things better, it actually rewires our brains on a neurological level. And there's a reason that most rules and most societal norms in ancient times were told as stories. People weren't given bullet points on how to act. They were told legends and myths about how to behave. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, what about the 10 Commandments? That's pretty much a bullet point list. I think we can discuss another time how successful that has been and how many people actually remember all 10 bullet points. It's a lot cooler remembering the story of Gilgamesh. Stories rewire our brains. Critical. A powerful example is this. Frances Garrity. Let's talk about her for a moment. Some of you will recognize this. It's from 1947. All of you will probably recognize this. It's from the De Beers Diamond Company. A diamond is forever. Now, in 1940, 10% of American engagement rings were diamond rings. Why? According to Frances Garrity, we'll talk about who she is in a moment, women wanted their men to spend money on a washing machine or a new car, anything but an engagement ring. By 1990, that number had risen to 80%. Part of it is because of this: a diamond is forever. The slogan coined by the very same Frances Garrity, who was an advertising copywriter working for De Beers, or at least for the company that worked for De Beers, if we're going to be technical about it. And that slogan, combined with the fact of getting Hollywood stars to wear engagement rings, getting engagement rings into movies, made people believe that engagement rings were the thing to do. They even had this beautiful story dating back to a European duke in the 15th century. And everybody knows if you can trace that, then you're doing something well. De Beers did another thing, which is beautiful and terrible. Before the 1980s, if you wanted to know how expensive should that diamond engagement ring, well, the rough answer was usually 1 month's salary. What did they do then? They did this. How can you make 2 months' salary last forever? A brilliant stroke of marketing. They basically said, you should pay more. You should buy a more expensive product. We're not raising the price. We're just saying you should step up your game in which product you buy. Story changed the world. And right now, we need new stories, because I don't have to tell you what the world looks like right now. It looks terrible. We need global stories. We need innovation stories. We need change stories. And most of all, we need human stories. You might be asking yourself, is this a particular human story image? It's buildings, right? Well, if you look at it like this, it's very much a human story. The problem isn't that we don't know how. It's that we're too afraid to try. And our solutions are 2x, not 20x. This is hospitality. And hospitality tomorrow doesn't need 2x solutions. It needs 20x. Let me give you a couple of examples, because small ideas are not enough. This is something I found while doing a little bit of research before this talk. What's actually cooking in the world of hospitality? Now, those of you who are reading have already gotten to it. Inventing FAQ bots to answer customers' COVID-19 related questions. It's a nice idea. It's a good one. It's not a big one. Creating mobile room keys so guests check in through an app instead of using a key card. Again, it's nice. I'd love to do that as a guest. A big idea? Not really. My personal favorite, free Wi-Fi in hotel rooms. Nope, that's it. That's the idea. We're going to change the world of hospitality by providing free Wi-Fi in hotel rooms. We should dream big, and we should remember that everything we have, from running water to democracy to airplanes to frequent flyer miles to even hotels, started with somebody saying, what if? And somebody else saying it's never going to happen. Everything started with no. The car wouldn't catch on. People didn't like the noise. It was too slow. There were people who predicted, oh, it's a fad. It's not going to happen. It's never going anywhere. The personal computer, yeah, let's just say that that one took off as well. And one of my favorites is this. In 1927, when the first talkie movie, The Jazz Singer, came out, there were Hollywood bigwigs who said, who wants people to talk on screen? That's never going to catch on. I think history has shown them otherwise. But it's also things like Bitcoin. Though nobody might understand it, we're still in a world where people said, oh, it's now risen to $100 per coin. It'll never go further. 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. And every time there's a world full of pundits saying, well, now it's reached its ceiling. And when it dives back again, they're saying, see, we were right. Except now Bitcoin hasn't dipped below the thousands for quite a while. And all the people who said it would stop at 100, well, they were wrong. The United Nations, the first time it was tried, it was called the League of Nations. Didn't go over too well, but now it's part of our lives. The idea that a company can be managed by small, self-controlling circles, the idea of the holacracy, is radical, but it might just work, and it does in places. We need to look to the people who dare to dream big. We need to look to people like Edison, who's famous for failing and failing and failing again, and then changing the world. To people like Virginia Apgar, who realized, oh, you can actually do a short and very effective test that reduces child mortality by looking at a couple of things. It's called the Apgar score. Look it up. Very interesting. And Walt Disney, who got rejected 300 times for Disneyland. I think it's fair to say that Disney is one of the most successful companies in the world, so much that my voice almost dramatically broke pronouncing it. Not because it was that emotional, just because I didn't control my voice rhythm. But Disney was rejected and rejected and rejected again. And when he finally became successful, he raised the bar and was rejected once again. You should also listen to this young woman. Well, okay, let's be fair. Right now, you should not listen to her. You should also not question why there's one kind of tail wing missing on the plane and it has no engines. This is Saga. But at some point, she's going to get to the point where you should listen to her, and you should especially listen to those who are not that much older than her, because they have answers and insights that we don't. We need to look beyond the tried and tested. We need to look to sci-fi writers, to theater directors, to teachers, to guerrilla marketers, to gamers, to poets, to magicians, YouTubers, historians, actors, crypto-anarchists, children have been mentioned, and storytellers, which all of these people are in one way or another. Disney just laid off 28,000 people. Now, I know some of them worked in janitorial worlds or in administration, but a lot of them worked with stories. I don't know how many of you have been out recruiting desperate Disney talent to help you change the world. I'd go for that if I was you. Because we need to dare to tell those big stories. Unless, of course, you prefer this one. Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." Right now, we have a crisis. A crisis. It was my dramatic ending. Right now, we have a crisis. Don't let it go to waste. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to welcome David Keane on the stage. David, are you with me?
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All the way from Bangkok. First, I just want to say a big shout out to Jonathan and a very, very generous introduction. Also, that what Jonathan really didn't mention is that he and I are in the 10% club in the Women in Hospitality Genius organization inspired by Marlus Nippenberg and her colleagues. And we're very, very honored to be part of that 10% club. The other thing that I really think is worth clarifying, and thank you, Klaus, for everything you've just said, is that today and now is our moment in history. We are sitting on the precipice, we're sitting on the edge of a cliff, and we can either jump off and fall down, or we can jump off and we can fly. And the opportunities for change are as Klaus, you and I have discussed, and I've discussed at length with Jonathan and with other colleagues, are really kind of phenomenal. This is the moment in this dinosaur of a hotel industry that we work in. This is the moment where tradition is going to fly out the window, and we're going to face transformation in the real world, in the real use of the word transformation, and we're going to see fundamental change. Do you want to put up those the first slide? Are you managing the slides?
It's there.
Oh, you can see. Okay, so I don't have that in front of me. I can't see it. Okay, that's okay, but I know what it is.
It's the luxury.
It's the luxury one, right? I hate the word luxury, as I've said, and I only hate it because it's completely misused. The word luxury has been hung upon an elitist vertical, which, for the higher you get, the 6-star, the 7-star, all of these kind of ghastly, gigantic hotels which are full of gold and ornate chandeliers. Yet luxury for me, and my understanding of the word luxury, it's actually banned in my agency because it's misused so much, is to a young salesman in perhaps in the hinterlands in India, or who stayed in boarding houses as he's traveled around 300 days a year selling something. And all of a sudden he's given the opportunity to stay in a budget hotel or in an economy hotel. And his aspiration, his luxury, is that incredible room in that beautiful hotel, which is, to those of us who misunderstand the word luxury, is probably not what they would describe as luxury. And I believe that what has happened in the as a function of the virus and as a function of the acceleration of the virus is that we are being democratized. And Klaus, you and I discussed this yesterday. I mean, do you think there's an opportunity for the Ritz-Carlton economy or the Four Seasons economy hotel?
I think that actually just before this all went to hell, there was an interesting thing happening in aviation with the rise of premium economy. Not yet business class, but not economy class. And I think there's a thing for everyone, and you say it very well, that luxury is the extraordinary, and it depends on viewpoint. For the person driving that Mercedes on the screen, well, that might be just his way to work. We don't know that. But for somebody who's dreaming of that car, who might not even own a car, it's an image of luxury. And I think part of it is we should be inspired by General Motors back in the day, not 100 years ago, but not too far from it, where their chairman of the board, Alfred Sloan, said there should be a car for every purse. I think he said it a little bit more elegantly. But they had brands that started with the cheap cars and went up to the pretty expensive ones, and you could get in at any level. And what is luxury is defined by where you are. I've just moved to a house from an apartment. I can tell you that having a garden, that is insane luxury for me. But to somebody who lives on a ranch in Arizona, it's not exactly a luxury. It's just Tuesday.
Right. But the A class, I mean, what I'm saying, and you know, our mission is obviously to drive stories, but our mission is also to share with the hotel industry, or to everyone who's listening, is that what Mercedes did when they invented or when they created the A class was they did a very simple marketing thing. They retained the brand, they retained their Mercedes brand. They retained all of the aspiration for the Mercedes brand, and they sold it in a smaller version, in a smaller car, which also had that the fabulous Mercedes logo. And so when I joke and joke about, you know, I'm not picking on any of the high-end luxury hotel chains, but any one of them has the opportunity to democratize and to expand and to challenge it. But if you go to the owners, it's exactly your question, you know, what you were saying about democracy or holacracy or any of the other things. If you go to the owner of any of the high-end luxury hotel chains and says, well, why don't you create XYZ budget? I mean, some of them have, but they are so terrified of cannibalizing their own brands that they won't go low enough. They won't challenge it. They say, no, we can't do that because we'll cannibalize our own brand. It's not true.
It's not, and there's also ways, even if you are afraid of that, there are ways around it. Ferrari is one of the most iconic brands. Not that many Ferraris are built every year, and in accordance, not that many are sold. But in Abu Dhabi, they have Ferrari World, which is a theme park. And it's huge, and it's amazing, and it wins awards, and it has visitors, and it's innovating, and it's doing brilliant stuff, and it's building the Ferrari name, but it's also using the Ferrari name without a car being produced. So if you're your brand in that way, and you don't dare to go the Mercedes way, then go the Ferrari way.
Right. And it's what the other opportunity that all of these high-end or highfalutin brands like Ferrari, the opportunity they have, as Jonathan's previous interviewer was talking about purpose. You know, purpose to a Ferrari aficionado or a Ferrari driver is very different from the person who's actually aspiring to even look at a Ferrari or to drive one day to drive a Ferrari. And if Ferrari takes its purpose and expands it to its audience and makes it more meaningful, the opportunity that they have is crazy, because then the generation that's coming up will fall more in love with the Ferrari than a functional vehicle.
And I think to expand on that, one thing is expanding the purpose, but also expanding the universe, that it's so easy to get caught up in what is your core offering, what do you do? The first time I saw a Ferrari, I can't remember when that was, but I remember that I saw Ferraris, you know, on TV, in movies. I saw Ferraris in computer games long before I saw an actual Ferrari, because the Ferrari brand reaches beyond just the car. It reaches into all sorts of other things. And there are many out there who are so afraid that people won't understand what their brand is about. Ritz-Carlton, for example. I'm pretty sure that Ritz-Carlton could take their brand and their expertise and dive into any number of interesting and lucrative and meaningful
Ancillary.
if
Yeah,
they do.
I couldn't agree with you more. And then this is something that we're preaching to our clients now, where, you don't just have to sell a hotel room. Let's look at, I know we're going to talk a little bit about office space or retail space.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about offices. I mean, let's really talk about offices and the story. And I know to Jonathan that our purpose is to talk about stories, but the stories of offices, again, of the utilization of office space is fundamentally shifting. I argue is fundamentally shifting as an accelerator from the virus. Google, Microsoft, Apple, countless other gigantic companies are all working from home. All of us, more or less all of us, have gone through that transformation. What does that mean to the commercial office space? It means that it'll go the same way, possibly not as quickly as vinyl, as CDs, as dial-up. Don't you remember that dial-up sound, that shh? You thought that would never go away. You've been lying on the floor trying to connect. But it will go, the office space will go the way of all of that crap, right? And what's going to happen to it? The towers are not going to come down. So your 2 times change is a 20 times change. And the people that imagine that change, they're the ones who are going to realize the stories of the future. Do you agree?
I agree completely. And also on the office space thing, I used to run a company with people in 10 countries, 3 offices, 10 different countries. And it meant that we would have people visiting and people coming in for a couple of days or weeks. So one of the things we had at the offices was room to sleep. And if I was a big company, let's say a 5,000 person company, and I went out and looked for a corporate headquarters outside of Paris, my first question to the person showing me the premises would be, how many bedrooms does it have?
Right,
And
I love that.
wait for them to go, what did you just say? I'd say, how many bedrooms does it have? This is the world of remote working now. It means that if you come to the office, you might come from far away and there's a reason you're going to be there. It's not just being in the building, you have your workstation at home. So how many bedrooms does the office space have?
Right, and why are hotel operators not reimagining that they can take 2, 3, 4 floors, and they don't have to create the same they don't have to create the same standard of hotel. They can create 2 floors of, of maybe a dormitory, of hostel-like hotels, smaller rooms, bigger rooms, whatever they are, but it can be under the same. It can be under the same brand, and it can give the convenience of integrating with a shared working space or with an actual office.
And we have that already. Conference hotels are a thing, and any big self-respecting hotel these days has conference facilities. Why doesn't it have office facility? Well, I know they have like one room hidden away on the 8th floor where there's a printer and a smiling receptionist, but why don't we do this? Why don't we use these beautiful spaces, tweak them a little bit so they can be more multifunctional? A long time ago, I stayed at a Las Vegas hotel. They had a bloody circus inside the building. Now that was something that stuck with me.
Right. I mean, I went into a new hotel in Bangkok 2 weeks ago because I was actually having a conference. And I honestly, I kind of laughed to myself. I walked into the ballroom and there it was in all its glory with the chairs all lined up. And I thought to myself, it's going the way of the CD-ROM. It's going the way of the floppy disk. It's going the way of everything else. There's no way you can make money per square meter on those spaces any longer. Meetings cannot, and everyone says, oh, the hybrid. I mean, as Jonathan and I have discussed in massive detail, the future of meeting is this. The future of conference is this. The future of networking is this. It's these discussions which, with smarter people probably than us, talking about really in a more esoteric fashion, knowledge and knowledge sharing, because the obvious access to it is, it's incomparable. You can't compete with it.
And I think that one thing we should remember when we say this, there's an underlying other truth there as well. That is that people will still get together. They'll get together for Burning Man. They'll get together for going on a ski safari or a trip with National Geographic photographers. And then they'll have business meetings. Then they'll have the business meeting of the future. If it looks a little bit more like Burning Man, then you have a chance that people will actually go to it. That's something we've seen at our College of Extraordinary Experiences, which is a business conference, but a pretty damn crazy one at a castle in Poland. And that's something that can't be replicated virtually easily, at least, and we haven't tried. But instead of trying to do physical badly, we should do digital better and then do physical better as well.
I couldn't agree with that.
That's the secret there.
I couldn't agree more.
Do you want to catch the slide before we run out of time?
Yeah, we got 5 minutes, right? Yeah, but it leads perfectly into it because social is not going to go away. People want to go. The opportunity, in my opinion, for restaurants, for bars, for clubs, for people actually to connect in a meaningful way, be it over lunch, over breakfast, over dinner, over drinks, over whatever it is. All of that is there. All of that will proliferate. All of that will grow. But those big malls, those big, and I live in Asia, those big, and I want to use a bad word, and there's too many people on here to say a bad word, but those big bad word malls, you know, I mean, it's again, they're going to change, and the opportunity and the person who can think 20 times ahead, who can diametrically imagine what to do with that space and make money out of it and make it social and make it useful and make it flexible, they're the ones who are going to win. They're the ones who are going to tell the right stories.
And there are, speaking on that in retail specifically, there are more and more spaces that are old and out of use that are being gobbled up by immersive entertainment companies that make them into zombie experiences. So you go into a mall and then you're chased by hundreds of zombies. Because who doesn't want that experience?
You obviously haven't spent enough time in Thailand. But
this is the thing. This exists. It's growing.
Yeah, no.
Sorry for stumping you with that one.
Yeah, no, that's I can take it. But I think that, you know, and we kind of referred to it in the moments before when we're talking about technology and we're talking about meetings and we're talking about hybrid. I mean, how does technology fit into the mall thing?
Part of it fits into that technology. We have this idea that it has to be everywhere. There was a time not too many years ago where everything could be solved with an app. If somebody had a problem, we'd like, oh, well, let's make an app for it. And the reality is that the more we get access to wonderful technology, things that would be considered pure magic even 50 years ago, the more we need to realize when does it help and when doesn't it? And what are we trying to create? Because it's very easy to think that if we can just replicate something with technology, then we're going to replicate the human emotion. It's not like that. I was in a pitch conference at some years back where somebody talked about how cool it was when you come into a hotel where you stayed 10 years ago and the waiter remembers your name. You know, that's a beautiful experience. That's human.
Right.
It's connected. We all love that.
Right.
So the idea was that everybody would have a digital ID on them telling the waiter on his iPad as he was moving over to the table what your name was. And to me, that misses the point completely. Because if I'm at a conference and somebody says, hey, Klaus, we met 5 years ago, I'm flattered that they remember my name. Less so if I'm wearing a name tag that says Klaus.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that the whole personalization thing is I still think it's fundamental to the future of experience and to the fundamental to the future of storytelling. But I think from what I can see, I'm trying to watch the clock. We're at 58. So we've got 2 minutes left. I've been saying to myself, I guess for the last 20 years, technology is still, it's just a drop in the ocean. It's just the beginning.
Yep. Agreed.
I still think that. But at what point in this revolution, and it's interesting how COVID has really, kind of honed in on the revolution and honed in on and focused all of us on kind of who we are and where we are and all of that kind of stuff. But where are we in technology, and how you look at the American election? I don't really want to talk about politics, but you look at the way that technology has impacted it, the way that it's impacting media, the way that it's polarizing societies and all of that. Is it the beginning, or are we sort of beyond the beginning now?
So let me answer with a story, and then we'll end off with that.
Okay, cool.
In the late 1800s, the American Patent Office, the U.S. Patent Office, they were talking about needing to downsize and probably close down because everything interesting had been invented already. So they saw that they were going to be scaling down from now on. That was the 1890s. I don't know if we're at the beginning. I don't know if we're near the end, but I'm not going to make that sort of stupid bet because that story, that's hard to forget.
Yeah. No, I still think it's easiest. I think to end, it's probably easiest to just imagine that we're still at the beginning.
I can live with that.
Take care. Take care of your beautiful, beautiful daughter. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.